We have had, well, this past week, we've had a number of little developments which have been, well, odd, should we say. Most of them at the national level. Down here in the Western Cape, things have been nice and sleepy for the most part. Our biggest problems are more long term, it seems. I don't know. Oh, whoopsie. Okay, I got the
You
stream
fine?
window open there. No, I had the
Yeah,
stream
fine.
window open there, so I got a bit of a repeat. So what was I going to say? I think I don't know about you, but I'm just going to start. I'm just going to go down a few local news stories before we
Go for
tackle
it.
some of the national ones. So there was a story recently about a clash between the DA and the Good Party in Theewaterskloof. Apparently, what happened is they tried to get rid of a local civil servant, and instead of going with their coalition partners and chatting it out, because they'd already failed to get rid of him because they didn't follow the right procedure, and so the guy went to the labor courts. They all ordered he had to have his job back. Now they want to get rid of him. They have to go through council, going through their own coalition partners. And like, this wouldn't be the first time the DA has done stupid nonsense like this. I mean, they had an all-out sort of civil war with the Vryheidsfront for about a year because they tried to pull this nonsense in Oudtshoorn. So their coalition partners didn't like their budget, so they went behind their back to negotiate with the ANC, which had already become something of a pattern. And then everyone just sort of said, "Okay, we're tired of this, and we're tired of the abuse of the mayor's powers." There's a whole bunch of issues. And so they had a motion of no confidence and said, yeah, look, we like our coalition at the party level, but we just want a different mayor. You try to do that. And then, and so the DA threw a hissy fit and says, no, we're not even going to come to the table. We're not. The Vryheidsfront said as well, we need a government. So anyone who wants to come form it, welcome. Everyone except the DA shows up. So they form a coalition government out of everyone except the DA because, what else are you going to do? And the DA throw a massive hissy fit, and they say, basically, we're going to kick you out of every single coalition government in the Western Cape, and all kinds of dirty tricks ensue. People crossing the floor from the ANC to the DA under suspicious circumstances. It's always a he said, she said, because that stuff happens behind closed doors. And so the guy who says, the guy in Swellendam, he said he was offered a 2 million rand bribe by ANC higher ups to cross over. His word against it's his word against theirs. So that couldn't really go anywhere. But no, the Vryheidsfront put a cap. The DA was doing things like choosing the Revolutionary Socialist Workers' Party over the Vryheidsfront in some places. So it was like, which is like a nothing party no one's heard of. It's got like one seat, in local admin, and so this business where they're like, okay, well, if they don't, their coalition partners are there for decoration. I know they complain about this at a national level, and they'll say like, oh no, the ANC is treating us like a rubber stamp. Well, that's how you treat all of your coalition partners. If they differ with you on any policy, no matter how tiny, you immediately shut them out of any process and go around their backs to the opposition. That's how the DA operates everywhere they're in coalitions. They're extremely cynical, chaotic, and inflexible. And you look at that weird trick that Helen Zeller pulled in that's like finally snapped the brain of Harun Mashaba. You know the one where she went like to get full control of Trane. They wanted to have the ANC give them supply and confidence agreements so they could run it. And then their deal was that they'd do the same for them in Ekurhuleni, so they wouldn't have to share power with the EFF. And Action SA just like, now Mashaba is basically like permanently mentally fried. And I mean, it's a good transition to like one of the national stories that I think is interesting, which is the motion of no confidence against Lesotho. Because
sorry. Just so you know, you are popping a little bit. I don't in your mic. I mean, it's
A
fine.
little bit of
I
overdrive. Let's
I
pull
don't.
it down. How are we doing now? How
Yeah,
are we doing
that's a
now?
little better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's. We're worried about mic volume before we came online, and now it's like.
Okay,
But
it's
at any
better
rate,
now.
yeah. So at any rate, we had the DA push a motion of no confidence now against Panyaza Lessufi for provincial premier of Gauteng. And the reason for this is like they timed it very well. It was literally the day after the public protector's report came out saying that his little Ama Panyaza, what's the official term for it? He's got like this municipal policing force, um, which is what are they called? The Crime Prevention Warden. Like all of that visible policing stuff that's been it's a good idea in theory, but he explicitly wants it to be like a make work scheme for the unemployed. So he's scooping up all of like the least productive elements of society, of which we have many, and having them to go and do, law enforcement. Coming, and so the day before the report, he goes and says, I can see their problems, but we still want to give them jobs, so we're going to reallocate all of these hired people to other silly things like traffic wardens and official nose pickers and so on. And the DA's response was really peculiar because, okay, look, there's some legal arguments about constitutionality and things like this, but some of them are like these are kind of elastic terms. I mean, what is a single police force? I mean, if they're working in concert with the police and they're subject to oversight and so on, can kind of be seen as the same thing. But you'd think with the DA having like a federalist manifesto, they'd want to like test the boundaries of devolution. And so what they're doing is they're using it to take a pot shot. Which okay, great. Panyaza Lessufi is a big problem. He's massively corrupt. He's an arsehole in pretty much every conceivable way. But it was like, what are you using this for? How are you using it? And for the DA, they could have gone for any number of other scandals related to Panyaza Lessufi, and they could have gotten rid of him much earlier on when they failed to secure secure the coalition they wanted in Gauteng after the elections. They didn't. They kind of let him go. And there were a lot of other people. I think, if I remember correctly, even Action SA wanted the motion of no confidence. And then the DA said, oh, no, this is too soon. You can't do that. And like now that the DA are actually doing it, they're saying they're saying no because, well, I said, they're a little deranged from their experience of the DA. And I don't know. For me, it's like, okay, well, we want a provincial police force here in the Western Cape, and the DA claim that this is something that they want too, but they're choosing to like go against it in principle up there in the north. So I don't know what they're doing because they're undermining. It seems to me that like either at heart, and this seems to me to be most likely the case, either at heart they just really like centralization and they just want to be part of the center. Or they don't have the courage of their convictions and are being opportunist because of local issues, regional issues. So, I mean, I don't know. It strikes me as like this is a fairly sort of sizable problem, and I mean they're in shit in other communities as well, like down here in B2, Plettenberg Bay. They had this guy Felix Lotter. He was the CFO for the municipality. Now, this is the municipality that's had like millions of rands being siphoned out by civil servants picked by the DA years and years ago. And like the Hawks prosecutions have been dragging on for a long time. And, the mayor in charge of this, who facilitated most of this, has been promoted to parliament by the DA, Memory Boyson. So like this is, and I mean like just to recap a couple of the main points about this longer sort of scandal. It was brought to the attention of Anton Bradell and Helen Ziller back in 2011. And the way they responded is they had the speaker who addressed this in the party internally. They punished him by kicking him out of the party by fabricating a unpaid membership fee saga, and he spent like 10 years in the court and the DA spent 3 million rand on this. And just to end up losing to Mr. Brummer, who won and demonstrated no, he didn't have any unpaid fees, and this would have been irregular even if he had, and so and then it turns out, that nothing happens and the perpetrators get promoted or shuffled sideways or whatever. It happens over and over again. Like, the DA, there's all kinds of weird corruption in Stellenbosch that I know all of the major leadership have been briefed in detail on, that they are deliberately ignoring. But unfortunately, that stuff is very, very complex. And until I get full confirmation of exactly what's going on, I still can't publish that stuff. It's very annoying because some of the characters involved have very deep pockets, and so I don't want to publish anything that I can't, legally substantiate. But the this is just. I mean, you tear your hair out watching this kind of stuff. And it's going on in Cape Town, but like Cape Town's very difficult to get like insider info on.
No, I was talking to one quite senior MP over the weekend. Am I echoing or am I okay on your end?
No, you're Pasha.
Okay,
you're great.
And he was telling me that within the city council, and I'm not going to mention who this person is, he says that the DA they are losing control. They are not able to hold things together very well. So kind of like what's going on in Stellenbosch. They have a majority, but
you mean they're losing control of the civil service? Like they can't control the managers anymore.
What happens? Yeah,
because I mean that's an interesting thing. It's interesting that you bring this up because remember the thing that we were discussing beforehand, and we're going to furnish this later. And this is about the spatial development stuff.
Yes.
One of the big issues that you get when you criticize a DA policy is they'll actually say no, it's non-political and it's got nothing to do with us. So they've got this thing of like politics is actually not a political enterprise, and there's just like the stuff that we want is an inevitable sort of legal mandate, and we don't actually there's no ideology involved or anything like this, which is absolutely bizarre and it's completely mendacious and cowardly. But it's what's interesting to me is like you look at the spatial development plan, and your response that you got from the DA guy was like, oh, yes, we were in charge. Yes, we wrote the bill, but actually it's got nothing to do with us. And it's just, the city fulfilling its mandate entirely within the civil service stuff. And I go like, but I mean, do we really live in a society where you have absolutely zero effect on policy? You don't have any say in anything at all, and it's just like, oh well, we're slightly better at implementing the KPIs.
I think either
vote for us a slightly more efficient version of the ANC.
Either he's totally naive, or he's lying.
Yeah,
he could be naive in the sense of his leadership, like Felicity Purchase and other members of the MMC, Mr. Hill Lewis or Comrade Lewis, as I call him. Unless they sort of drip feed down the line, guys, our hands are tied, this is not us. Like, unless he genuinely does believe it, there is a cult-like nature to the DA, especially around Zilla. There's probably a whole bunch of factors at work there. I
think it's an entire party run by people who are like Hal from Malcolm in the Middle, who make every single decision based on fear. I don't know.
It's just so crazy to me because the city council has 231 members. How many of those are DA people? 134. It's 58%. Okay. Of that whole city council, they're all politicians. There's ANC, there's ACDP, they're all politicians. So how can you divorce politics from a politician? And it is a political body. That is what it is. It's just it makes a politician is always a politician. There's no time when they're not a politician. Politics will always flow through.
But it's interesting because there's this great remark that was made by I don't know, I can't remember who it was, but it was one of the sort of big American reactionaries, sort of online commentators, and they were saying that what liberalism is it's like it's an attempt to do politics without politics. I don't know. It might even be Curtis Yarvin who said this, but it's like, trying to do politics and then say at the same time, no, this is non-political. Or, so you don't have to discuss ideas. You just sort of try and do things more efficiently. And it strikes me as like it's a lot like this fear of disunity, fear of confrontation, fear of controversy. And so people who don't like that sort of go into the liberal thing. And, in the UK, you've got the Liberal Democrat Party, which has quite close ties to... They have quite close ties to the... Yeah, sorry. You go ahead. I'll say what I'm going to say in a bit.
No, I was just saying it's total nonsense because there's... Even if you try to do things non-political, political's always there. You can't get away from it in that sphere.
Yeah.
So even his idea of trying to do politics without politics, that's nonsense because it's like it's always there.
Yeah, it's kind of mendacious, but it's also if you want to see like the best practitioners of this for in a conscious and cynical way is Tony Blair. So what he does, and he's actually described this as a conscious like rhetorical maneuver, is if he wants to get a policy done, he sort of frames it as, okay, this thing is inevitable and it's happening anyway, and we need to keep up with the times.
Yeah.
So there's this whole thing of like, well, progress is based in technology and sort of the economy and the natural sort of ebb and flow of things. And, you will not meddle with the primal forces of nature, Mr. Beale. So it's this kind of approach. And you can hear it when you listen to Helen Ziller as well, although she's a little bit more... I think she likes to humiliate her opponents a little bit more because she does this thing of like, everyone's coming to see that my way is correct. Like she does this in every like interview at least once. Like everyone is starting to realize that blah, 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 whatever her position on something is. And I remember when I chatted to her, the one time that I've actually met her, she was talking about her book, Go Woke, Go Broke, and I was thinking about like, that came out in like 21, 22, whatever it was.
2020, right? It was on the plane.
So 21. I think it was 21 because she said she released it like over the Christmas holiday or whatever it was. But I said, don't you think that's a bit stale now? I mean, we've been going against this stuff since like, 2014, 2016. The real year to have published this would have been 2016. But she says, no, I think I was well ahead of the times. And I thought, that's weird. Like, it took me a while to, like, click what she was going on, because she's actually savvier than people give her credit for. And I noticed it by going through her, like, because I wanted to figure out what exactly she meant by this, because it's quite obvious that those battles were being sort of waged in the public sphere, 6-7 years before she published. We're kind of tired by this point for a lot of people. She comes out with it and she says she's ahead of the times. And I thought, okay. But then I remember that, like, around the time there was a big bet between two of the bigger sort of internet commentators on the right. One is Nima Parvini and the other one's Oren McIntyre. And they had this bet going on about putting the woke away. And the thesis that Nima Parvini put forward is he said that you have all of these kind of woke, they serve the left only up until a point. If they go too crazy, they alienate huge parts of the population and force them over into the right and disempower the left and so on and so forth. And he said at a certain point, they're going to stop all of this woke stuff and it's going to disappear. And put away during Biden's presidency. And I can't remember if they ever really settled that bet. But it was for a cigar, if I remember. And the two of them had this point that went back and forth for a while, and it was very interesting to watch. And it's around the same time you get this sort of thing coming out from Helen Ziller, where it's like, okay, well, the Blairists and sort of his colleagues and contacts in the United States, the circles he runs in, a lot of them were saying stuff like, okay, well, this woke stuff's gone too far, and we actually need to think about crime and immigration and controlling and order, and people want this, and it's destabilizing to have populism. And again, there was another interview with Fraser Nelson, who edited similar, where he said that the way that you deal with populism is you give them the impression that you're addressing their grievances, and then you can just ignore them and move on with whatever policy you want. Now, Fraser Nelson runs with, I don't know if he still runs it, but he ran at the time. The Spectator is like an ostensibly right of center sort of
I don't think
publication.
I don't know if he's still involved.
Yeah, no, I don't think he's still involved. I think he left like a year or two ago, but it's like fairly recent. So, no, but he was said in an interview like that. This is the approach: is you've got to give them the impression that you're listening, and then you can just do what you like. And I mean, this is a lesson that the ANC have learned with their own constituents a long time ago. I mean, it's stopped working. It's stopped working because it's been going on for too long. But this is what people want, a certain thing. And I think, Helen Villa understood this so well. I was hearing from, a couple of insiders talking about that transition to my money. The strategy over there was to go, okay, well, look, he needs to be seen as an authentic voice for black people. And Helen Zille is seen as a bit right wing, which she isn't. She's progressive. The thing was that she quietly sort of said to him, listen, you need to actually attack me for being a racist in public because it makes you seem more authentic and like the party's changing. And her comments on she lined up a lot of comments for him to bat away like this. And I think the colonialism one about Singapore having benefited from being colonized, I think that one was like teeing it up for him really. But then James Self, who she had long had like a very bitter disagreement with from back in the days where they were merging with the NP, and he decided to use it as an opportunity to take revenge on her, and they had a disciplinary hearing against her inside the party, and she never forgave him for that.
But she's definitely come out now. She rules it now. I mean, she's got an iron fist.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, if you want to understand what the DA is doing now, you read that report. It's available on Politics Web, and it was written by Ryan Coetzee, Tony Leon, and Michiel Leroux. And so, if you just Google their three names, Politics Web DA Report 2019, you'll find it. It'll be like the first result. This report sort of goes into like this is where I got that 4% stat that I keep hammering out about DA black support. So what they do is they kind of go and say, well, look, we can't win black support. And if we want to win black support, what's going to happen is there's a party and it's going to alienate our minority support. Because we've got the minorities locked down, we're going to lose them and disappear the party if we try and cross over, and we're not going to be seen as authentic if we do. So the strategy became, okay, and you can hear this in that voice note that was leaked in, was it 2021 or whatever, from around that time, where she was talking about the plans to form a coalition with Ramaphosa. And she said, well, 22%, it's a strong position, and we shouldn't try and pursue a greater share of the vote than that. And like people would be confused by this, but that's the reasoning. They understand that their best position is to lock down minorities and drag them into the ANC's, arms. Because again, going back, just recapping again for all the people with short-term memory, 2012 interview with Chatham House. She had told the interviewer that the long-term plans were to wait for the faction under Malema to split off, because this is like a couple of months after Marikana happened. It's like, okay, they're agitated, they're unhappy. If hopefully the party splits, and then we can form a coalition with the ANC in the future, and then merge the two parties, because we really, really like their policies and we want an opportunity to implement them. So it's that was what she said back in 2012. And she's been on this basically since Marikana. She's had like a very clear vision of what the new arrangement is going to look like. So, yeah, I think, where was I? Oh, yeah, work and putting the work away and all of that kind of stuff. She said in a couple of comments on Twitter, like several years ago, she was talking to like high-ranking American officials on Twitter, and she was saying, listen, all of this woke stuff, this is why people are voting for Trump, so we need to put it down. And it's that logic where she kind of goes, well, the party decided we needed John Steenhuisen because he's cuddly enough to present like the Rainbow Nation stuff, but he's also white, and and he's got an Afrikaans surname, and so he gives the impression of like, oh no, there's no way he would be against minority interests, you know, and so he reassured people, and that 3 percentage points that they lost from the ballot to the Vryheidsfront Plus in 2019, and they got back in 2024. Right, everywhere except the Cape. In the Cape, they didn't win those back. That's big credit to Corne Mulder, because Corne Mulder was he cultivated like a bunch of thoroughbreds down here in the Cape who were serious about tackling DA corruption, and also the Cape Independence thing. It gave them a position which gave their party platform meaning down here, which it doesn't have up north, because up north they're not really pursuing any new vision.
Self-determination, yeah.
Yeah.
Through sources, apparently the FF Plus have been growing quite significantly the last few months.
So the what has been growing?
The FF Plus, the Freedom Front Plus,
yeah.
down here. And I think it's because more and more people are becoming disillusioned with the DA, myself included, even though I'm still legally a member. I'm becoming more and more, and I voted for them for 15 years. I put these oaks in power. I put them in power, and they are not serving me anymore. And many others. It's not just about me. It's about all minorities. They are not serving minorities, and so I'm very close to being done with them.
But my criticism remains. I mean, I sort of had a soft quitting of that party because I actually joined with the hope of getting close enough to the leadership that they'd listen to like policy recommendations and things from me.
Is that the DA?
No, Vryheidsfront Plus.
Okay.
And I just got very frustrated with the culture inside the party because, look, they're the greatest platform this country has for change. Honestly, I know that sounds bananas considering how small they are, but they could be the tail that wags the dog in the Cape if they really meant it. But they've become very bureaucratic, and they developed this sort of like highly bureaucratic and like literally, I'm not joking. If you want to make a social media post, you have to consult 3 different committees. So that's what it's like. And then they've got this leadership that is the same little crowd of people that's been in place for 30 years, same as all the other parties. And so as much as I admire Corne Mulder, it's like he has to negotiate with the same guys who for example, betrayed John van Schalkwyk and so on in Swellendam. And I think about this a lot because I got frustrated with this. They wouldn't leave the GNU, and I know that's like okay, why? My point is, like, if you want to actually present yourself as the opposition party, and they could literally have as their campaign slogan the only opposition party in South Africa. Like, that could be their position, but they choose not to because why? They want to be the adult in the GNU, but like, what does it mean if you're an adult but you're a dwarf and you're dealing with 7-foot tall children? You're not the adult in the room in a meaningful way. So I just don't see the point of them being in the GNU, and it's losing them leverage because the reason people vote for them, they're looking at the guys are looking at the polls and going, okay, we need to be more. Everyone likes the GNU or the idea of the GNU and unity and all of this, and this is true. People like the idea of unity in the abstract, but that's not why people vote Vryheidsfront Plus. People vote Vryheidsfront Plus because they're dissatisfied. And so if you have this target market where you can scoop up dissatisfied people, and instead you're trying to defend the status quo, you're completely missing the mark. You're misunderstanding your support base.
Do you think that do you think that a party like the Referendum Party, if it pitched itself as an opposition party down here, and an opposition to the DA, it's an opposition to the DA, and they could start scooping up dissatisfied DA voters? I wonder.
Well, they could do better than that. I mean, like I have the idea, and it's not my original idea. It's just, but it makes sense to me. Is that the Referendum Party could actually pitch itself as a broader disunitarian party? So a sort of populist devolution / independence party. So wherever you are in South Africa, there are a lot of communities that want more power for themselves and want more control. And one of the instruments that can be used is private referenda. And so I've been doing a bit of research into this slowly but surely, and I'm going to start looking for people to fund a pilot project in a couple of months.
How would that practically work from like a governance level? Because okay, let's say you do the
Well, no,
referendum.
it's
Who do you then take it to? You take it to the DA. They'll just ignore you.
No, but it's fine. Just you hear me out here. So look, the DA are scared of public opinion. They are. They're terrified of it. So they have an enormous PR budget. The fact that they dominate the airwaves because they're very professionally run PR. Everything for them is about perception rather than actual impact. Yeah, no, they're much more concerned about making sure the problem isn't seen than they are about solving the problem, and that goes for all cases. And you can see this in the Western Cape when you look at local politics a lot. What I sort of see is that the thing about opinion polls and everything is you can always say something against the opinion polls or whatever. But a private referendum allows you to target specific policies that you want changed, and then you can put it to a general vote. And using that, you can put enormous pressure on the administration. The very act of running one of those and winning it on a critical position will massively, massively, massively impact people's decision in the next election. Because they're going to look at this and they're going to say, well, I've already made a choice that this is bad. I've gone out of my home, or at least opened up an app, or responded on SMS, and said, "This is bad. I don't like it. It must go away." And then, if the administration doesn't do it, some not insignificant portion of those people who participated will go and say, "Well, yeah, okay, well, I'm not voting for you again." So the ability for this to have an impact is good, because it's not just like, oh, you're going to take a small sample and then try and extrapolate it. You'll have a representative sample.
And so, do you think something like, if we had to segue from this into the kind of crux of this video, which is the integrated development plan, the bylaws, as well as the spatial development plan, which has at its core densification. Do you think a referendum on densification could be?
Well, you need to be specific. So if you push a referendum on densification, you'd better have a very, very clear idea of which specific policy you're tackling. So the problem with like urban planning is it's really complex and nebulous, and people don't like, even if you understand it, it's hard to get. And I can only claim to understand it a little. It's hard to sort of build up a what's the word, like an emotional resistance, an emotional response to these things, because they're nebulous ideas and they're very soft. They're soft enforcement. What it does is that, look, you'll hear this a lot from like the DA when they're communicating with on like local elections, is they'll say everything's about service delivery, right? Service delivery is a nice distraction from actually what the core function of the municipality is, like the thing that they do every day. That distraction is the wrong word because it's incredibly important, but it more or less distracts you from the fact that the municipalities actually have a very, very, very enormous power and not just in South Africa, anywhere, over the economy. They can decide who gets permits for building, for running a business, for access to various areas, whatever the case may be. The city is the gatekeeper for all of commerce. So you can do the kinds of corruption that are possible at the local level are ones that shape your entire economy and the way of life of your people. So the problem with the DA is they don't want you looking at this. They don't want you thinking about planning permissions, about building permits, about spatial development, except in the most abstract and of senses. And the problem with counteracting this and getting people to focus on the concrete is that it's absolutely backbreaking work to even understand the dimensions around a single development. It's really, really, really hard. So it's this opaque thing, this black box. I mean, you've got things like, let's say, heritage commissions. If you have if you have the chair of your heritage commission is, let's say, he's got a business stake in construction or whatever. Like he owns a construction company or cement company, or it doesn't matter what, right? What they say yes and no to is going to be touched by these vested interests. And heritage commissions, they can impose big fines on you, and it's not. And so, I mean, the heritage commissions like this, like nobody even thinks these are powerful people, right? But then you've got people on like waste services, on the water boards, on traffic departments, provincial and local, right? All of these people can tell you yes or no on anything you want to build, any business you want to run, anything, right? And the idea that this is like, okay, a superfluous thing, this impacts everything. Like the left are always going on about apartheid spatial planning. Now, this is a really stupid thing. This is very stupid. But they have a very good point that actually needs to be paid attention to, which is that spatial planning is rubbish in all of our major cities. Now, there's a number of ways that they're bad, and much of them have to do with left-wing policies. Much of them have to do with cronyist commercial policies. And some of them have to do with weird globalist, internationalist, environmental bollocks, right? So in a number of different ways, you can sort of say, okay, well, we've got bad spatial planning and our development plans are wrong. But it's a pain to go through this and figure out, okay, so what do we actually need to do? It's like I'm someone who likes the town planning philosophy of Leon Creer, right? The Luxembourgian guy who he's a big proponent of, a lot of the sort of like hippy dippy stuff, like, livable cities and walkable cities and all this, which doesn't really work in our context. But he has some other sort of points about city development, which are kind of good. So one of the things he says is that, you don't actually want to have like a CBD and then like a sprawl outward. You want to have multiple business districts, multiple main business districts, and multiple sort of minor business districts. And what you do is you make the city like a cluster of little towns instead of trying to have it be a single network. Now, the DA have done some of this, like they're trying to develop a CBD in like Belleville, I think it is. But this is not going far enough. And in my opinion, the people who really need to have a CBD developed are like the Cape Flats. So what you want to do is you want to pick an area like in the dead center of the Cape Flats, maybe near the coast, right? And you just pick a little spot where you develop the hell out of a tiny area with like a couple of high-rise office buildings, some clear space that is car-free, with some shops and what have you, and you have a nice, secure area. You can privatize it, run with private security. I don't care. But basically, you just create a very good business-friendly area, even industrial. It doesn't matter, right? Just a place where you can do business and you can come and it's relaxed and it's good, right? If you can do that in that area, you create a second node where people can sort of commute to for work, because everyone is trying to get into the city center. This is not healthy, because they're also making the city reliant on a single point of failure, and then they're failing that point. I mean, I've written about this several times because it drives me bananas. So the DA's got these central improvement districts, city improvement districts. Now, this is on paper, it's a kind of good idea, because what they're doing is they're saying, okay, well, if 60% of the people who live in a particular area want to contract a private company, which of course only the ones we approve of, and there's there's no vested interests, we promise. And so from like a short selection of companies that are allowed to do this, that are making absolute bank on this, they provide like security and street sweeping and bins and all of this kind of stuff, right? And so the DA gets to take credit for privatizing the municipality and extracting your taxes as well for the illegal settlers. So it's an incredible system. The Vryheidsfront Plus have a response to this, which I think is brilliant. What they do is you voluntarily collect as many of your neighbors as you can, as long as they're a contiguous area, and you say, we're going to look after our own stuff, our street or whatever, right? And you just subtract whatever services you render unto yourselves from your tax bill. Like, it's magic. It's the most beautiful thing. This is exactly the way to do it. They call them city upliftment program or something like that. CUP.
Are they actually doing it, or it's just a theory?
No, because they're not doing it because the DA won't support it. The DA can't. The friends of the DA can't make money off of this. So, like, the phrase from Chris has actually got some of the best bloody policies. I mean, look at how Peter Groenewald, and I have enormous criticism of the man, but look at what he's doing in prisons. He's insourcing all of the services that prisons produce. Because if you have all of these private contractors, right, for various things, they can cheat you out of almost anything. But what he's doing is like, okay, well, we're going to have our own bakery because we need to provide bread to the prisons, and we're constantly having to renegotiate all of these contracts. So let's just bake our own bread, and then we just pay for raw ingredients. It's very hard. It's very hard to cheat on raw ingredient contracts, right, for things like that. So it makes it cleaner. You have, it's just so much better on so many levels. And you don't have to deal with so much tender fraud or problems with oversight or whatever. But what the DA have done in Cape Town, so the CIDs, they're very important because the private security that they produce has meant that the CBD in Cape Town is incredibly safe. It's incredibly safe, right? But the CBD itself, as designated by the city, until very recently, only had like 3,500 permanent residents in it. So of those 3,500 permanent residents are actually very high income for the most part, right? They can afford the surcharges on their municipal rates to provide these services, them and the businesses that are there. But what happens now is the DA under Jordan Hill-Lewis has decided he wants to dump 50,000 people who are like indigent into subsidized housing in the heart of the CBD. So now what happens to that 60% threshold that is legally required to get the CID there? Well, those people are going to say, I don't feel like it. I'm not paying for that. And when the tender comes up for renewal, they are not going to vote for it. So how do you maintain the CID? Well, they're going to get they're going to have to get some kind of special contract with the city. And so then the city is subcontracting stuff that they should be doing themselves so that someone else can make a profit. So it's this is a very, very sort of crude, corrupt, convoluted way of screwing up the city. Because now you've also got like these people who are going to, well, they're going to create a lot of crowd. They're going to increase the population density quite severely, and there's going to be an increase in crime.
I think here's the difficulty we find ourselves is that at the moment things, quote unquote, are working better in Cape Town than other parts. I mean, that's for sure. But the long-term consequences of densification, as set out in the integrated development plan, and that's being rolled out through the spatial development frameworks, the local, the district, and the municipal. The long-term consequence is only going to be felt in 20 years, but it's going to be disastrous, absolutely disastrous.
Yeah.
And not only for the environment, but for local schools, which are already under huge pressure, and as well.
Yeah, and I mean, look at how David Mania managed that. Look at how David Mania managed that crisis. I mean, like you have to cut a certain portion of the teachers, but instead of means testing those that they were excluded, they fired them by lottery and then renegotiated to keep them with the unions. Like, the guy is just not, like, there's nothing going on there. The man is just not there. He might as well be a stuffed puppet sitting there. Like, what's the point?
And so so I guess people in Cape Town need to wake up. They need to wake up that their city is being changed. If you read the IDP, it's very clear they want to reshape Cape Town. They want to reshape it. Now think what reshaping means.
It means turning into Johannesburg. Because, I mean, look, the thing that I'm describing where you collapse the central business district, that's Johannesburg in the 90s. That's Johannesburg in the 90s. And the reason that happened in Johannesburg was that was kind of organic in a way. Part of it's due to like subsidized housing and things like this. But the other part was due to the businesses in Johannesburg saw the massive influx coming, and a whole cluster of them just like left the country in the 90s. And it caused a collapse of rates in those areas, and it just fell apart. And at the time, I don't think they had executive mayorships. I think that's part of the reason that they put together these more centralized metropolitan governments, is because of the effects of these kind of localized collapses of rates. But it was too late. So you're going to struggle to fix Johannesburg like this. Everything's like these private parks for business parks and things like this now. So it's like, yeah, no, it's we're turning into like Lagos slowly but surely everywhere. And I mean,
No, sure,
there was
and then like, but then the question is, what do local people in Cape Town do? Like, what practically can they do to? I mean, you can do a vote.
well, you got to vote the
this.
DA out. You got to vote the DA out. You got to pick. Yeah, you have to
pick
pick the
someone
Fraser
else.
Plus. It's like there's no one else who's actually got their eye on the ball for these kind of policies except the Fraser
party or not. Or the
yeah, no, I'd support the referendum party as well. But I mean, look, my position is that we don't really know. I support them fully, but in terms of my problem is just I want to see the party sort of like jump up and do better, and so we'll really see if they can in the next 6 months. And I'm going to, I mean, like I mentioned that sort of private referendum stuff. It's not my idea initially. I mean, the party itself wanted to do a provincial one, but I mean, I've been chatting to them, and the idea is like, okay, if you can get these things running at a local level, that's much more powerful.
Because
and it's easier to justify. Exactly, and you can use it to sort of demonstrate proof of concept to donors, right? Because a province-wide one is going to be very expensive.
Massive, very
So,
expensive.
yeah, exactly. So it's like, I mean, you need to get for a local one, you need what, like, I can't remember. I think Robert King, who sat in, he was looking at this and got a quote for. I think it was like 40 or 50K to run it in a small town. So it's like R1 on average per person who participates. So yeah, the interesting thing with this business is I think it's difficult. Naturally, I have this weird sort of proclivity where I kind of go, okay, but this person has the ideal message, so I'm going to work to help them. But in the meantime, I'm going to kind of go, this is good enough for now, let's go for that. And that's how my approach was with like Referendum Party and, Cape Independence versus Vryheidsfront+ is like, okay, Vryheidsfront+ is established. They have people they can deploy to look after departments. They have people that they can use theoretically to draw up bills in provincial parliament and in city council, and the Cape Independence sort of parties haven't got that yet.
No.
So at this stage, I'm just sort of going, well, look, at least Vryheidsfront+ supports Cape Independence, and they count as part of that cluster. Let them have a go at it first.
Sure.
I mean, look, when you're talking about coming to turning into Johannesburg, the ISS actually published an article in August that said this, right? So they say, look, we got maybe like 10 years before we start going the same way. But his approach was to reach back, like unknowingly. He has no idea he's doing this. But he basically goes back and recapitulates the DA's policy since 2006, because he says we need to embrace informality. So, like, this is, I mean, anyone who's been paying attention to us for a while will know about the DA's policy, violence prevention through urban upgrading, from 2006, where they start incentivizing land invasions by saying anyone who's illegally settled on land we'll now work overtime to make sure that you get title deeds and utilities connections. And then they only chase people off land if a friendly developer who knows someone in council or in the civil service, wants a piece of land. So that's the only time that they actually do evictions, is when it inconveniences a donor or someone like that. They don't care about the impact on local communities or anything. And in fact, they sneer at them. So
look at what they tried to do in 2010. Let's just take people's back mind to 2010. Hout Bay, Hangberg is a community on the other side of the harbour. And Zilla and all her comrades marched there to try literally remove. Go and read about it. 2010 Hangberg. They tried to remove them. thankfully the community was strong enough. They all stormed out of stones and stoned all of Zilla's comrades' cars for like 2 weeks, and then eventually they gave up.
So wait, Hangbach, was that a
Hout Bay.
Oh, that's the Hout Bay settlement. I mean, yeah.
And that land, from what I understand, it's alleged, please don't quote me, they wanted to develop that into, luxury things, because it's prime land. I mean, it's absolute prime land.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I mean, they won't help anyone out who needs it, and they only help out people when there's money to be made. And Zilla's thinking on this matter is that, look, we need foreigners to buy up land in Cape Town and drive the property rates up, because then we can extract more money to give to people in shacks.
Yes. Well, interestingly enough,
but this is a known phenomenon across the world, where you do these policies which restrict land access through either through a combination of green policies and urban housing, and you subsidize this with a foreign property market, and the combination squeezes out the middle class. And I mean, and then you have problems with middle class commuting, or if you're in a developing economy, that they end up evaporating and going off to the first world to go work, and so you give yourself a brain drain. Like, where are the people? Like, in my street, like half the people over here, like commute to Cape Town for work. I look at this and I go, like, what are you doing? I mean, we're like an hour away from the outer, like from Cape Town, and I just don't get it. Like, where do you think
this is spatial development? So the whole point of this video, this is spatial development. I mean, that's what it is, and this is exactly what the DA are driving. They've stated it very clearly. Go and read the IDP. The IDP governs the entire city council. It's their statement of faith. It's their 10 commandments. And it's
densification, which, by the way, you look up where it comes from. It comes from Agenda 21 in the UN from 1992, and they pick it up from OECD reports in 1990. And so it's literally like, as the Soviet Union declares it's collapsing, everyone sort of said, well, now we can implement this new paradigm that we've been sort of like quietly sitting on since the 60s and 70s, right? And it's the most bizarre shit. Like, the densification problems are the ones that kill the middle class and grow the underclass and the wealth of the overclass. It's just like this constant erosion.
And also there are many negative side effects. Crime, I mean, all sorts, pollution. I mean, there's so many negative consequences to it. And it just coming back to my point, I feel shame for mentioning the IDP and the 10 Commandments in the same sentence, because the 10 Commandments are actually really good. The IDP is like from hell, So,
yeah.
So I digress.
No, but I mean, the whole problem with like densification, you don't need to read their policies and find details to pick up on the fact that the DA are really, really, really aggressively for massive influxes of people into
small areas. Yeah, Cape Town.
Yeah, I mean,
in the one spatial
it's already
development,
2/3 of the province's population are there. What you should be doing is working on developing towns like, I don't know, towns in the Swartland like Malmesbury, or building, if you can get a transport hub going in Beaufort West or stuff like this,
No, I've got a better plan. Well, I was thinking about it. I was like, what's the alternative? Well, the first thing I would say is stop developing on undeveloped land and go to the areas where there are, for instance, informal settlements, and work with those people to develop housing and things there. I know
it's not so much
challenge.
To develop. Well, no, I mean, look, because the problem is that's kind of part of how they'd like to go for it. But it's part of the reason it's difficult to develop those areas is because the structure of ownership is actually informal. So you'll go to someone who looks like they own that shack, and what it is that the person who really sort of materially owns the shack, in terms of the person who controls that land, will be some sort of gang or some enforcer connected to the ANC. So it's this.
But the problem is that they then go and build a low-cost housing elsewhere, but they can't remove that informal settlement, okay? Because they are not able to remove them.
No, but David, I mean, this is an easy fix. I mean, the we can look at the referendum party. Now, referendum party, Phil Craig has been a powerhouse here. So what he's done, amongst the other bills that he's been pushing forward, is that he has drawn up a new PI Act, Prevention of Illegal Eviction Act, right? So the PI Act has a number of provisions that cause huge headaches for everyone. So you can't remove people once they're established, and so on and so forth. But the problem with the bill is that it doesn't define what a home is. And what he's doing is he wants to legally define, for the purposes of the Western Cape, that a home cannot be on someone else's land.
Yes.
So, it should be obvious when you read the PI Act yourself. They refer to tenants. None of these people who are saying they are tenants, they're squatters, and you cannot treat a squatter and a tenant as if they're the same phenomenon. So clarifying this in law becomes, especially because it's a dual schedule on the in the Constitution. This is something the DA have power over. They don't ever put legislation on the table in provincial parliament except the annual budget. The last time they did this, they even actually bothered with this, was the what's it called, the Provincial Powers Bill, which exclusively existed to neuter the efforts of the independence movement to push actual devolution and actual autonomy, right? Because they said, look, you want autonomy, you want devolution, here's a bill that leverages existing features of the Constitution, treaties the ANC signed, and it gives us these powers. And the DA panicked, quickly drew up a completely pointless and toothless piece of legislation that does nothing, and then just tells them to occasionally beg for more authorities from the ANC. And then they put it to bed and say, okay, well, now we're done. We don't have to think about this anymore. And I look at this kind of thing, and you're like, well, what are you doing? You have all of these problems that are being massive headaches for anyone who wants to do anything, and you just refuse to even try. There's not even the barest effort to attempt to solve any chronic problem. That is the DA. They've never, ever tried to solve any problem, not once. The only things that they do that solve problems is they implement existing shit that doesn't require any thinking, right? And it just boggles my mind that you can do this overnight. You say, oh, you're illegally on that land. Go home. Here is a court order. Sod off. And they don't even try to do this because they say, oh, our hands are tied. The laws, they're really bad. Well, then write new laws. You literally occupy the provincial parliament. What are you doing?
But I mean, in one sense, it's a positive for me, but it's also a negative if you look at voting patterns and who votes for the DA. And if you look at, for example, at the University of Cape Town, the DA have no influence there at all. They're they're nothing there. In 20 years, based on those facts, the current DA are basically not. I think they are going to lose everywhere because most of their voters are elderly boomers, English, Afrikaans, and so forth. They're going to be dead in 20 years, and that goes their voting base. And the current DA will be no more unless of the DA, becomes the ANC.
That's the plan. That's the plan. That's the plan. And then what? I mean, the
minorities will just completely.
They're going to be 50% black in the next couple of years, and only 4% of those people vote DA. What are they doing to themselves? This is bananas. Kick the people who are illegally settling, which are about 80% of the black population in Cape Town, right? You buy them a ticket to go back home, and you develop the land that they were squatting on. You just repeatedly do this over and over again. This is how you develop a city. They don't want to do that because it looks mean and nasty, and it is kind of mean and nasty if you have to be honest. But if you don't do this, you are facing collapse. And then you're going to ask yourself, oh, well, why is Johannesburg failing? Johannesburg is the one place in the country where a greater percentage than 5 vote for the DA, right? So one place in the country where you can get a significant minority of black people to vote DA, even that. Okay? And I look at this and I despair, because I mean, Helen Zille wants to go in there and fix everything, but now she doesn't want to change the composition of the civil service. She doesn't want to change the policies. She just wants to focus on fixing a couple of big ticket service delivery items related to your water reticulation and electricity. That's it, right? And to get those done, she is going to have to face down armed gangs with no police assistance. Like, it's just, there's no realism about this kind of thing. Yes, you should vote for the DA in Joburg. That is your best option if you're a Joburger, right? Great. Sorry that that's how bad it is, but that is your best option. However, that said, I don't think it's going to fix anything. The DA is going to realize that they have a ceiling. They're going to come into power in a coalition. Best case scenario, they come into power with the ANC. But in that case, they're going to have to compromise and make sure that they never look under any rock that's got corruption under it. It's like, and this is what they're doing in national government now, Ramaphosa. It's like, oh, nobody must look at this. Oh, what are you doing? What are you doing? Totally unserious. Unserious.
Yeah. No, sure. And that's why people need to realize that they have to take their own community seriously, and they actually have to take things into their own hands. There has to be, call it self-determination, call it localization, whatever word you want to use. They have to take their own future into their own hands and start to mobilize non-politically, politically, and to start. And even if it's just a vote protest, where they're like, okay, I'm not going to vote for the DA because I want to send them a signal. Even if it's just that, that's better than just.
I don't know. I'm not a believer in voter apathy. As a minority, we're like, the only reason that any part of the country still functions is that minorities show up to vote. White people, colored people vote in greater numbers than black people proportionally, and that's the only reason that anything is governable. The thing is, you've got to understand electoral blocks. You've got a quarter of the party political world is minoritarian, and 3/4 are majoritarian. So if you are in the minoritarian bloc, vote for a more hardline minoritarian party. You can go ACDP. You can go, I don't mind. I mean, like, I'm not going to force anyone to vote against their conscience here, but you have to think strategically. If you want to see change, you're going to have to go for ACDP, Vryheidsfront, Referendum Party, Cape Independence Party, literally anyone to the right of the DA. Because if you can't do that, you're going to watch them drag everyone into the ANC. This is the point. And they're going to cry about rats and mice and whatever. I wish there was a populist colored party I could support. I wish there was. It makes me very sad, because I look at Gayton McKenzie and I say, okay, well, all of the policies he shouts about look great. The problem is that the whole party belongs to the 26 gang. So it's like, well, what are you doing? And then you've got Fadil Adams, who is a fanatic, who could have definitely been like someone who does something material. I don't even mind that he hates white people. I'm like, fine, whatever, go on, just do something and stop being disruptive and be serious. But you watch how the members of his party contribute, and how he let his party be taken over by people leaving from the ANC and dropping the Cape Independence thing. I mean, like, why? If you're a colored person and you're not for Cape Independence, are you for being subservient to other races for the rest of your life? I mean, you can't be serious. You can't. I mean, like, this is literally your only opportunity to be a majority in a country that belongs to you. And you're going, oh, no, but like, what if white people have a bigger say? Yeah, we will have a bigger say. That's why we like it. But we will never be more than a quarter of the population at the very outside, at the most extreme case. So the idea that we get to boss everyone around is just bananas. We're not going to get to do that. Okay, what's going to happen is that you're going to have colored people being the deciding factor in what happens in an independent Cape. And yet somehow they're timid. They're scared of this. They don't want to embrace it because they don't know what it means. They think, oh, well, the Cape Independence is full of white guys. Yes, because we know that the alternative is absolutely disastrous for us. But the present is disastrous for you guys. I mean, it's just anyone who looks at the state of things for colored people in South Africa, just like it's bad.
Yeah, if you, I
Only
mean,
way
I
you
mean,
can
on
take
that
charge.
point,
Yeah.
there's so much evidence behind it. The one I did do an article a while back on what a professor from UWC, she openly talks about how transformation is just one group crushing another, and she was talking about how colors are treated there. And then there's obviously at the Simonstown Navy, and there's all sorts that's been going on. And the latest story was from Romeo Hector, who's the husband of the one submarine officer. She died on the submarine last 2 years ago. Komiki, they colored, and the way that he has been treated by the Navy is terrible. And it's quite well known within the Navy that that there is a causes promote causes. There's like a very much like a promoting and
ethnic nepotism.
Coloreds are not as, let's just say, important in the Navy.
But the thing is that they have a traditional attachment to the Navy. The thing is they've had traditional attachment to the Navy for a very long time.
Yeah.
And you're now seeing them getting pushed out. And I think that's dismal. I think it's absolutely dismal. It's like what's happening in the fishing industry, where you've got the traditional fishing province is the Western Cape. It's 85% of the fishing industry. And like the majority of these contracts are going to people whose head offices in like Johannesburg and what have you. And I'm like, this is absolutely bananas. The idea that you can give away what these people of these people's heritage because of, I can't. It makes me so furious. It's not even my inheritance and I'm getting angry, do you know what I mean? Yeah. I don't get it. I find it very infuriating. But there's not much you can do. You can just hope that people sort of find it. Because here's the one thing that sort of gets me is when you talk to like traditional leaders like the Khoi traditional leaders, they keep saying this one thing. They want the government to recognize them. I'm like, no, recognize yourself. Take power. Like there are things that you can do to get more power immediately. And things that you can do to get more power in the long term, and things that you can do to grow your influence and what have you. But you recognize yourself. You say, well, look, I'm here. I live here. This is my place. I have the authority to have at least some say over what goes on here. And then you say it and you do it. And I don't know why everyone's waiting for others to recognize them. Recognize yourself. And the same goes for the white community, who there's a particular lack of confidence around people saying, well, look, I'm part of this too. So, and the way we deflect is we'll have like a lot of this impotent signaling. But then when it comes to like making actual decisions, we're like, gee, don't want to do that. That might be a radical change. Don't want to do that. Why? Why is it scary?
So, look, I would say, the circles that you and I roll in are a little bit different in some regard. I roll in there's a lot of Christians that I know because I go to church and so forth. And I talk to a lot. When I talk to them about these things, their whole thing is just pray for the government. That's what they'll say. They won't. There's no concept of actually any kind of civic action. It's just, we just pray for the government and we go to church on Sunday. So it's like a private thing. Their Christianity
but I ask these people the same thing. The easy question to ask.
But the problem is that if you study Christian history, you realize that Christians in history for 2,000 years have been actively involved in civic life. It's only the last 20, 30, 40 years. Think about it. During the apartheid, was the church involved? Yes, in a very civic way.
On both sides of the equation. On both sides of the equation.
It's only the last 20, 30 years. I don't know what is going on with the church now, but people are so scared to take anything into civic action. This doesn't mean you have to make a Christian party. If you want to, you can. But the point is, people are so scared of any kind of civic action or any kind of political action. They'll just, we just pray and we just.
No, but it's weird. It's like, this is the bizarre thing.
But it's not Christian. That's the thing. It's not even Christian. If you study church history, you realize that some of the biggest movers, they were Christians, and they acted in a civic way in the right direction. Think about William Wilberforce. He was a Christian politician who fought the abolition of slavery. That was a Christian thing. That was a Christian thing, the abolition of slavery. And he fought in politics, in parliament, and in the public sphere. And they got it through. And so I wish that Christians would wake up to realize that their inheritance is involvement in the world around them, not just, yes, heaven is going to be great, but we don't just live for heaven. There's also today.
Yeah. I mean, look, my perspective on this is, look, there's this weird thing that they end up doing, because, I mean, the people you're talking about are almost certainly going to be like DA voters. And so what you're doing is you're
100%. All DA voters.
So what they're doing is they're saying, well, even the small act of saying, actually, I'm just going to vote for a party that is more serious about doing the right thing and pushing pushing policies that are more morally correct. Forget even the pragmatic stuff. Just like let's talk like pure morality, and you say like, okay, well, I want a party that represents my moral position better. But they won't even do that. It's very bizarre.
No,
it's this very lukewarm approach where they kind of go, well, look, the DA is uncontroversial, and I wouldn't want to be controversial, even inside my own mind, because I've got the Sanhedrin of the body politic sitting above me already. So they go into the ballot box and they pick DA instead of Vryheidsfront Plus, instead of ACDP, instead of what have you. It doesn't matter. And I sort of think, well, look, bare minimum, if you're going to be quietist about it, if you're attending the ballot box, at least pick someone that represents your the values that you claim to have. But instead, you're picking this pro-abortion, pro-LGBT, pro-global, environmentalist, global governance control kind of stuff party. Like a decidedly anti-Christian philosophy and political power base. And they're picking that over their own values because of what? I mean, the claim is that, we got to pray for the government and hope they do better. Yeah, but I mean, your minimum level of involvement is to indicate a preference for a different one, right?
And I think that it's linked to money. They scared that if anyone else comes in, that that's comfortable. So unfortunately,
that's a difficult thing.
A lot of Christians love money, and as the Bible says, the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. The love, obviously, it's the love of. But we love our comfortable lives. We love to be able to go play golf on the weekends and to travel, to go to the Kruger and to go sip wine at the waterfront. And so by upsetting the apple cart, we might lose that. Now, I get it, but that's short-term thinking, because your children, your grandchildren are not even going to have an apple. I mean, I'm being a little, but the point is, in the current trajectory, your grandchildren will, as a minority, will either assimilate into the majority and just be annihilated, or they will have to leave the country. And so you're going to lose everything yet anyway. And so you die,
you become a decorative. You become sort of superfluous decoration on society instead of an active element of it.
Sure.
Yeah, and I mean, it's even if you want to forget your own progeny and you want to be serious about being compassionate to the broader body politic, it's you need systems to function, right? And it's okay to look and say that, look, the managed decline under the DA rule is of a pace slow enough that we can cope with it for now. But my perspective is, like, if you're thinking 10, 20 years down the line, that, even if the pace is gradual, by then you're going to be very far down the line. And it's not good enough. This is not good enough. And it's not just sort of comfy middle class people are going to be suffering. It's a huge number of people. The present state of affairs is pretty dismal for a very large number of people, not just in terms of things like wealth and comfort, but more tangible stuff like the homicide rate. And I sort of think that for me, that's still number one. Is I want to see that homicide rate come down by 30 points out of 100 out of 100K. Like, I want to see that go down by 30 points at least, and it can be done. But before we go off on this, go on.
No, and in order to get that, we have to have a party that's serious about passing bylaws serious about devolving police power in order to bring down that rate. That's the issue. They have to be serious about local policing and actually using their political power to actually bring that. Like, I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean to go down a tangent, but I was talking to a fire chief of Mitchell's Plain, one of them, or someone who's quite involved in it. He said that they don't even go into some areas because the firemen get mugged and attacked. Okay, so I said to him, why doesn't the city like do something? He's like, who knows? And so, like, that's crazy, dude. And like, anyways, but yeah, carry on to your last point.
Yeah, no, I think the thing is that we've gone on a lot about some of the main things, and thankfully we've gotten a lot of juice out of the spatial planning question. But there are two other sort of issues that we need to touch on before we go on. And the one is I think we'll finish with the presidential succession question. But first, I want to touch briefly on the DA's alternative to BEE. So the DA's alternative to BEE is, I covered this in a long stream, which is a bit rambly and unstructured. But I also wrote a nice, neat article on it on the website explaining what's going on there. And part of the problem I see is that, I mean, you can put it some way. Okay, it's never going to pass. Because, I mean, it's already been, before it's hit the floor, it's been rejected by the ANC. So, okay. So, first of all, it's not going to happen. So, great. But second of all, it's bad, right? Now, the reason it's bad is that it basically makes it necessary. If you want to do business with the state, you have to implement the spatial, the Sustainable Development Goal Plan of the United Nations. So what you're doing is you're taking this international body that can't enforce its own policy and say, we are going to make them legally mandatory in our own economy, and you as a private member of the have to enforce all of these targets, right? And we're going to judge you on how well you meet them. So this is really, really pernicious. Now, of course, they say they're going to have a points-based system. Now, this is very interesting because it's a very clever way of doing this, because you look at it and it says 80% of this is about value for money. Great. But we have to evaluate you on sustainable development goals for that last 20%. So that means you have to have the sustainable development goals implemented in your, it's mandatory. And it's a very complex policy framework. You are going to have to get some fancy, expensive consulting group come in and evaluate your company at the cost of tens of thousands of rands to make sure that you've got measurements for all of those little KPIs, right? So this is going to shut out a large number of companies, right, from accessing this stuff, right? And included into this is all of that LGBT, racial progressivism, gender-based progressivism, all of this kind of stuff. So that all of those little race quotas and stuff play a part, and you get score points for this. And you have, by implementing those KPIs within your company, even if the enforcement mechanism from the state is weak, you have embedded that enforcement mechanism and those targets into every single company in the economy. So you're not actually changing how things work. Not fundamentally, no. And this is like you're never going to get rid of these policies if the DA get them in power, which thankfully they won't, because the ANC is not doing it. But what they're effectively doing is they're saying, okay, well, you have to choose between this aggressively evil, stupid policy and our slightly less aggressively evil, stupid policy, because we're not going to abolish sort of state mandated central planning of the private economy. That would be absurd. So but here's the funny part. They have, for 3 years now, they have had the power to abolish BEE in practice without changing the law at all. And very quickly to explain how this works is BEE functions in the following way. You are mandated to, report. If you're a certain category of company, you have to report what your BEE status is. That's employment equity scores, ownership ratios, management ratios, right? Race, gender, disability, sexual orientation. The DA look at this and they say, okay, that's great, but we just want to make the gender, disability, and sexual orientation criteria stronger. So that's that's how the DA have been approaching it so far in their own implementation of procurement policy. And procurement policy is where the rubber hits the road, because in order to do business with the state, which is over a third of the economy, you have to have a high ranking score. And in order to get that high ranking score, also the companies that you contract with will have to meet those high scores. So what it has is a ripple effect. Nobody is allowed to do business with the state if they or anyone they do business with is insufficiently transformed, right? The thing is, in 2022, there was a court case, and it was echoed also in remarks by in the Zondo Commission by Raymond Zondo, that in public procurement, BEE is actually not constitutionally enforceable. You cannot use the Constitution to mandate it. What you can use the Constitution to mandate is value for money, right? Because that's actually part of the framework for how government bodies are supposed to contract with the private sector. And what this means is that it's actually a criterion of priority. So your priority number one is to meet the value for money criterion. You have to be effective, you have to be cost effective, you have to get the job done, right? You have to have a better bid. That's number one. And then because the other one is of a secondary priority, there's an interpretation. We're just going to go for value for money, and only when all other things are equal do we consider BEE. For the past 3 years in all of the areas they've governed in, but they refuse to. They absolutely refuse to. And this is a sign of, really, I just don't know if it's because they're completely unserious, as I keep insisting, or if it's also because they actually cynically want to push goals on an unsuspecting public. Now, they've made the UN SDGs part of their manifesto, and they have backed the Climate Change Act, which gives the minister plenary power to set any emissions targets, not just for carbon dioxide, but for any chemical substance, arbitrarily and without oversight for any sector of the economy, any region in the country, or any individual company. Right? That's the power of the minister.
Why do you think other people are not talking openly about this this quote unquote replacement, which I call DAEE instead of BDAE. Why are other people not talking about it?
Well, because everyone reckons it's better than the alternative. But I sort of say, well, two alternatives to the present system. One is the DA's way, which is the United Nations should govern everything. You shouldn't have a say in what future you have. It should be designed by foreigners whom you cannot influence. And by the way, just to remind everyone what the United Nations status is, they are allowed to commit any crime they want in any territory and have complete legal immunity in every area that they are that they are part of the UN treaty, which is basically every territory in the world. And you can go on a joyride and run over children in the street. They can't prosecute you. You can steal money and they can't prosecute or even investigate you. It's like, this is terrorist organizations. They help naughty governments rendition people for torture. That, like, the UN is one of the most disgusting organizations on the planet. Not only this, but I mean, like, if you look at the history of the development, if you want to talk about critical theory and how it gained a major foothold, UNESCO, which is partnered with all the world's major universities, established critical theory as the formal methodology for the social sciences, right? Back in the 60s or something, right? They've been pushing most of the green stuff, and they think, okay, well, their enforcement mechanisms are weak. Yeah, their enforcement mechanisms are weak. They can't tell the United States what to do, but their influence at the institutional level within countries is enormous, absolutely enormous. And they're a purely pernicious force. They do no good anywhere they go, right? And these are the people that and I mean, the whole point of UNESCO, when it was founded by Julian Huxley, high-ranking member of the Fabian Society. His brother Aldous Huxley wrote Brave New World, which is a sort of parody of his brother's worldview. Julian Huxley saw UNESCO's role as using scientific methods to create a new world religion, right? And this is in his own words. And so part of the UNESCO is something called the United Religions Initiative, where they get together the heads of the major world religions and try and harmonize their position on social policies and doctrine and so on, right?
Yeah.
And so
what do they call it? Finding a consensus.
Well, I mean, it's what Orthodox Christians would call universal ecumenism, but it's the kind of hubris that you get from this worldview is absolutely bananas. And the DA's perspective, as enunciated, countries have to be forced to be multicultural, right? And that all of them need to sacrifice their modern sovereignty because the nation state is irrelevant. And we can have a private economy, but it must be controlled by the state, right? I mean, I can find you the links to all of these clips. I think I wrote when I wrote that big article on their 12-year plan, I embedded links to these interviews and extracted direct quote. And the perspective is that, which we realize the aims of the United Nations by demonstrating that you can have a multicultural society where ethnicity doesn't matter, and then global government is the main point. So you've got this. It's actually a really profoundly radical position where you don't get to negotiate any of the values that run your society. The model for running society never changes. You know, any saying that you can pick alternative manager. You can do that. You can't do anything else. And I mean, this is I find that pernicious. Every area, every economy, every part of the world is different, right? People within states are different. They have different dreams. They have different desires, right? Even if they have desires that superficially look the same, they want them realized in different ways. They have different things that are sacred to them, right? And I think that the idea that everyone needs to be forced into a single plan, that there will be no future, it drives me bananas. It drives me absolutely bananas to hear this, because it's just it's a claustrophobic idea.
Yeah,
I've actually got to move on. Before,
no,
so
we must.
You say your part. We have. I'm going to move. I'm going to move on to the presidential succession one.
Yes, no, I just agree with you that there is definitely our current line is, I call it the singularity, or central control, and there is the strong move towards a singularity, and anything other is demonized or called subhuman or not human or misinformation. And so what we're doing is not the singularity, we're doing independence. So obviously we are called misinformation. So, but yeah, I definitely can feel this singularity. So I do agree with you.
Yeah. I mean, I just, it frustrates me because this BEE stuff, it's got to go. But it won't as long as Ramaphosa, it won't go as long as Ramaphosa is in charge, and he's the least radical of the options that are available. Like, that's what we got. But what was interesting is we had a very interesting remark a couple of days ago from Fikile Mbalula, who said that, okay, look, we know that the president of the republic can't have more than 2 terms. And Ramaphosa already got an extra year and a half from stepping in after Jacob Zuma was deposed. But what we're getting over here from the ANC is that they're talking about having him nominated for a 3rd term of the ANC presidency. The ANC understands the states as being secondary and subservient to the party. The cadre deployment is part of it, right? It's not just about enriching and looting. It has actually got a political function rather than just a nepotistic one. And that political function is that it allows the party to have ideological control over every department, make sure that everything's going away. So they're enforcing this as well through a change to the Public Service Commission. They want to have a new bill that gives them powers of subpoena, special powers of investigation like the police have, and powers to penalize state employees. And in some respects, you can say, oh, of course that's needed because our civil servants are crooks. But the thing is that they're now extending these powers down to the municipalities as well. So the national government is going to arrogate to themselves the authority to intervene in any kind of hiring and firing processes that occur across the country. And they're going to say, okay, well, we're going to step in there and we're going to pop that bubble because you're hiring someone we don't like. And the powers that I mean, I just don't. I think this is a very bad idea. We won't know for a couple of months whether this bill will pass or not. Opportunities for increasing cadre deployment and removing people who aren't with, playing the game. So, in light of that, you've got people around Ramaphosa to make sure that his patronage network remains in place. And the alternative option that I've seen a lot, and you've seen it actually pushed by News 24 and allied forces, Patrice Motsepe.
Oh my word!
You heard this? You come across them?
No, of course I just laugh. I'm like, it's just such a joke. It's just such a joke. Like,
because remember how the ANC gets like succession. It's always like, okay, the deputy president of the party will become the president. It's happened smoothly and like clockwork for like 100 years, right? And when they come into power in the party, they kick out the incumbent in the presidency, right? Because can't have conflict there. And that's happened to Thabo Mbeki, and it happened to Jacob Zuma, right? And it might well happen to Cyril Ramaphosa. And I mean, even like Prince Mashele is actually a fairly sort of balanced, sensible commentator. He says that Ramaphosa is not going to last past that conference if he doesn't win the leadership position. And this is a big, big problem. Because if he loses that leadership position, it's probably going to be Paul Mashatile. And you notice what people are doing. It's like they keep trying to get... We had an official denial from Motsepe that he would run, right? And now that could mean anything, but what's the old phrase? Don't believe anything until it's officially denied. But there is a chance that he actually is being serious about the fact that he really just doesn't want it. But he's the president's brother-in-law, so he would very clearly preserve those patronage networks, those interests, and so on. And he donates to all of the major political parties. All right, what he gets in return is unclear. But he definitely manages to stay largely outside of the limelight. There are very few scandals that have touched him.
Yeah, him and his wife like travel the world, going to like film festivals.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, he's a very successful businessman. He owns some of the biggest mining enterprises in the country. And it's hard to argue with his respectability, at least from the outside. But I find it enormously suspicious that, he's family of the president. Just, it goes on. Oh,
sure, of course.
Yeah, and I don't like it. But at the same time, you got to look at the alternative, which is Paul Mashatile this year to bring in the MK and the EFF into the coalition and kick out the other guys like the DA and so on, right? So it seems to me that he's already sort of planted his flag, but he's been very quiet on a lot of the ongoings with like the Mkonazi trial and so on, where you've now had Becky Cele come in and accuse Ramaphosa of having relationships with Kat Matlala, right? Now, Cele himself admits that he personally knows Kat Matlala. He's spent time at his penthouse. They've wined and dined together, but in a completely, friendly and non-corrupt way, And what was interesting is Mkonazi accused him of having some, improper relations with Kat Matlala. And then the day before Cele testifies, right, you get Mkonazi retracting those statements. Interesting. And he also said something really peculiar that's obviously wrong, which he said that the 2021 riots were completely spontaneous and unorganized, which, as police commissioner, he would know is not the case, because it was the MKVA in a coordinated effort, targeted major transport routes, burnt a huge number of trucks, and targeted distribution centers. And this was the first thing that they did before the riots broke out, right? Is they targeted main infrastructure and transport routes to the Durban-Johannesburg corridor. After that, you get the rallying of the riots. Here are looting opportunities. Come here. And then they graduated from supply depots and transport hubs to retail outlets and malls to domestic neighborhoods, right? So that was that was how that unfolded. But he's saying no, it was totally spontaneous. It was unorganized. There's no organized element. So I thought, okay, but he's also been promoted by Zuma's camp a lot. Now, I believe that what Konazi is doing is good. I think that he should go after the death squads that are being run by Ramaphosa's, the death squads that are associated with, should we say, Ramaphosa's favorite police commissioner, police minister, Senzom Klunu. But his predecessors obviously got, sour grapes about the whole thing. I was hoping that, Ian Cameron would ask him about the 2011 pact that Cele and Zuma made with the Cape gangs, which resulted in, massively rising homicide in the province, and indirectly the murder of Charles Kinnear. But that's a whole other can of worms. What was interesting for me is around this in the last year, you've seen exposés targeting Julius Malema and also Paul Mashatile. And Paul Mashatile's one, I think, came out in the last week or two. So this is a book by, I think it's Dutoy, the News 24 editor. So he does this big expose on like the criminal network behind Paul Mashatile. He's never done such an expose on the president because, wow, no, you can't do that. Not that anyone in their right mind believes that Ramaphosa isn't corrupt. Everyone knows he is, but no one wants to touch that because then no one gets to pretend to look good, and then we're going to have to do something. So you've got this situation where you can see, all of these sort of centrist state-allied organizations and commentators going after Mashatile and his faction, and going after Julius Malema. And Julius Malema, they finally managed to go start the process to get into prosecuting the VBS scandal or just before the elections. And this is what precipitated, in my opinion, the collapse of the EFF and the exodus of all of their senior members to first the MK and then the Wilderness. It has basically left the EFF as this massively top-heavy organization. And if in sentencing next year for his firearms misbehavior, he gets sent to prison for longer than a year, he can't even be a member of parliament. And there pop goes the EFF and it's done. Right? So the EFF is like potentially on its way out as a political entity in South Africa. And the MK can't find a replacement for Jacob Zuma, and he's not a spring chicken. I mean, Hlophe might try, but I don't know if he's got what it takes. And then they're going to get rid of, and they're hoping to get rid of Paul Mashatile, who's the link for all of those people to come back into the main party and unite the movement. So this is what you're seeing, and it's from across the board. There's a large number of public and private entities and persons who are trying to move this political faction. And Konazi is the big spoke in the wheel, a big spoke in the wheel. All wheels have spoke. What am I talking about? My metaphors are
like something
in the works.
This. It's spoke,
and in the works because he brings up. Yeah, because he's bringing up a very serious problem. We have hundreds of political assassinations in the country, and they're not, and everyone knows that they're connected to the party. About 60 of them happened in the contest between Senzom Klunu and William Klunu, who are both unrelated. They're just, the Zulus are not a group that have a huge number of surnames. So there's a lot of that happens. So Senzom Klunu and William Klunu, their competition for regional chair in 2016, there were 60 homicides that led up to that of assassinations, political assassinations in the province. So it's really nasty stuff, and a lot of these in normal times are related to tenders and access to tenders. And it's very clear what happened. The political killings task team looked into connections to Mkhunu, and they had their hands cut off. and that shouldn't have happened. They should be investigated. But in the meantime, you have all of these leaks from like crime intel, state security agency, all of this about like location of private, safe houses, irregular spending, which of course you're going to irregular spending as a South Africa. It's corrupt everywhere. There are no good guys here. And a lot of participation from journalists who are the vectors for a lot of these leaks that are very disruptive. And then one of the big things that one of the big things that stands out here is Mkhwanazi is very popular. Okay, because he's actually doing something, and it's not just because of what he's doing now. He's popular in KZN for what he was before this. He developed a reputation for when he goes into a place with armed criminals, they don't hesitate; they just kill them. And you have Paul O'Sullivan coming out and pretending that this is outrageous, but everybody loves it because armed gangs are armed gangs, and you can't go in there with a bunch of flowers and say, "Pretty please, will you come to prison?" And you can't wait for them to shoot. You can't wait for them to like blow holes in your comrades before you take your weapon out.
Yeah.
So no, they've been pretty brutal, and a lot of gangsters have died. But it's generally regarded as, well, at least he's doing something, and true, that's somewhat respectable in a way. It might be messy, but I don't know. I'm on the side of doing things here.
Yeah.
And so here's your problem, is that the voice of sanity and accountability is now allied with MK. And the establishment is now starting to be associated with really horrific forms of corruption.
Yes.
And everyone relegates the term death squad to the apartheid era, but I mean, we've got death squads right now, and they kill lots of people. So, and they are state affiliated, and as a result of what's being revealed now, they're connected to the president. So, I think this is going to be very messy, and it's really hard to say how it's going to turn out for the ballots. But I think it's definitely going to weaken everybody's resolve across the board, because there are no good guys coming here. And I think, but I think what's going to happen is the black nationalists are going to make hay out of this. They're going to make a lot of, this because Mkhwanazi is definitely their boy. And one of the big giveaways of coordination between these parties for me was it's not the stories lining up so much as the signaling that happens. So Mkhwanazi says all of these things about Bheki Cele and his involvement and his complicity in various stuff, right? And I'm not going to go into that right now. Retracts it a day before he comes and testifies. Cele comes out and immediately he gives the most glowing review of Mkhwanazi that you've ever heard. This is a guy that until a couple of days ago was saying, throwing him under the bus. Now they're on the same page. So I suspect what's happening here is it's actually starting to, as time goes on, it's becoming more and more coordinated. And I suspect that Mkhwanazi stood up and did what he did because he was afraid for his life. And by coming on
from
with
who? From by
I don't know.
Cyril.
Mkhunu and Cyril and like all of the people attached there. Because once he's been shut down, it's like it's a matter of time before he loses his job or something. Something happens. Right?
But if he goes public, then it's much harder to take him out. Because now if they do, people are going to... But
it's not that it wasn't public. Because remember, this report was leaked back the letter was leaked back in January, and then they start leaking sort of stuff about like stories about Mkhwanazi and his units like in March. And this kind of goes on. So when he comes out in June and stands up, he wears the paramilitary fatigues and he brings his boys on screen with him to say, "Listen, guys, you are doing bad things. I will not be stopped investigating. And also, look at my guys; they're behind me. They're going to look after me. I am not Charles Kinnear."
No, it was clever. It was clever what he did.
Yeah, and I mean, like all of the hysteria about coup is coming. No. He's just trying to show, I am not small. I am dangerous, and do not mess with me. And you have to if you're going to do that. So, I think it's on like Donkey Kong. In the next couple of years, something is going to break, or the ANC is going to reunite.
Okay,
that's what I see. It's one of those two.
Dude, this has been awesome.
Cheers, man. Good
Have a
timing.
Good day.
You too, man.
As I finish the garage door open, and I think my children are going to come in now.
All right. Well, send my regards, and
Thanks.
thanks for coming on. And
Yeah. Chat soon.
Yeah. Bye.
Cheers, man.
Alrighty then. Thanks for coming online, guys.